Good evening. This is Monday, January 5th, 15 days until the inauguration of President-elect Barack Obama, and the night before the Senate of this nation is to convene with twin plot lines that neither Frank Capra nor Rod Serling would have touched. An ex-Saturday Night Live comic elected by just 225 votes in a Minnesota recount, and a distinguished member of the Hall of Fame of Centralia, Illinois, appointed by an allegedly almost cartoonishly corrupt governor. Call it Mr. Franken and Mr. Burris go to Washington, and who knows what they'll find when they get there. Mr. Obama, the president-elect, having already arrived in Washington, meeting today with Democratic leaders on Capitol Hill for a refreshing change of pace. He was not, repeat, not the center ring in the media circus. That status reserved for the Senate sideshows. This just in. Calling Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh idiots and liars can be an excellent career move. And it's also worked for Senator-elect Franken. The Minnesota State Canvassing Board today certifying the Democrat as the winner of the U.S. Senate recount by 225 votes out of nearly 3 million cast. The board members doing so only hours after the state Supreme Court turned away a bid by Republican Senator Norm Coleman to have more than 600 rejected absentee ballots considered in the recount. Coleman's attorney saying he plans to file a legal challenge on the grounds that Coleman did not win. Not made that up. On the grounds that those rejected absentee ballots should be counted. Meanwhile, on Capitol Hill, Senator Coleman's staff locked out of their Senate office by order of officials on the Senate Rules Committee, which declared that Coleman's term expired, saying, quote, they cannot carry on Senate business. After the board certified the recount results, Senator-elect Franken in Minnesota saying he's good enough, he's smart enough, and doggone it, people like him, but in words more befitting his new profession.
After 62 days of careful and painstaking hand inspection of nearly 3 million ballots, after hours and hours of hard work by election officials and volunteers across this state, I am proud to stand before you as the next senator from Minnesota. I know that this isn't an easy day for Norm Coleman and his family, and I know that because Franny and I and our kids have had plenty of time over the last couple months to contemplate what this would be like if the election turned out differently.
The fight over the open seat in Illinois moving from the land of Lincoln to the land of the Lincoln Memorial. Today, the Senate rejecting Roland Burris, saying his appointment by Governor Rod Blagojevich is not official. Mr. Burris at the airport in Chicago before getting on a plane to Washington, calling himself the Magic Man and Senator Burris.
I am going there to be seated. I am the junior senator from the state of Illinois. That's all I can say.
You haven't been sworn in yet.
Well, and I'll look to be sworn in. But I am the senator.
Time now to call in Chris Cillizza, White House reporter for the Washington Post, also author of The Fix at WashingtonPost.com. Good evening, Chris.
Good evening, Keith.
So what are the odds that Franken gets sworn in tomorrow along with the other new senators?
Probably close to zero. I think that while Harry Reid did say today, the leader of the Senate did say there is a time when a race is over, this race is over, Al Franken has won, I don't think they're going to try and swear him in tomorrow. Republicans, John Cornyn, Texas Senator, head of the Republican campaign arm in the Senate, has promised to filibuster. I don't think they're looking for that fight. Coleman is going to, as within his legal right, contest this on the grounds that the recount was not handled properly. We're likely looking at a relatively lengthy legal fight, but Al Franken is ahead by 225 votes, and all of those 3 million or so votes have been cast. That's a big, big advantage for the Democrats.
And you mentioned the Coleman legal rights. What are they? What does it say about the viability of his options if the officials on the Rules Committee today ordered that his offices should be locked and his staff can't go in there, and they said his term has expired?
Well, his term expires officially on Saturday, so I don't think you should connect the two, but I do think throughout this process, Keith, we have seen the Franken legal team beat the Coleman legal team to the punch. And as we learned from Florida in 2000, it all ends up with the lawyers. As much as I like to say reporters are important, politicians are important, in the end, it's the lawyers who matter. This is a legal fight. There's a guy named Mark Elias. He's a Democratic election lawyer here in Washington. He has been working for Al Franken. That guy, if Al Franken gets in the Senate, Mark Elias deserves a lot of credit. So Democrats have won the legal fights to date. Doesn't mean they will win this election contest, but they've got to be feeling pretty good given where the election ended on election election night and where it ended up today.
All right, let's move to Illinois and about Mr. Burris. He said on Sunday of Senate Democrats, quote, "They cannot deny what the Lord has ordained." Two-part question. If Blagojevich is the governor of Illinois, hasn't been tried, hasn't been impeached, and the governor is the guy who has the right to appoint the replacement senator, how on earth could Mr. Burris not be seated? And part two of this is, which Lord is Mr. Burris invoking? A holy Blagojevich?
Well, Rod Blagojevich may well think of himself in those deity terms. Look, the reality here is this is a game of chicken between Roland Burris and Rod Blagojevich on one side and Harry Reid and Senate Democrats on the other. In theory, Harry Reid and Senate Democrats have the right to choose their membership. They can choose to seat or not seat people. However, there's a big disagreement among constitutional scholars on whether, if this is pressed, and as you point out, Keith, Roland Burris is within his rights. Rod Blagojevich is the governor of the state. Whether he's embattled, whether he's scandal-tarred, he's still the governor. He appointed. Roland Burris has a right to that seat. If he wants to push this thing all the way out, it's going to put Harry Reid in a very uncomfortable position, not to mention the fact that Roland Burris would be the only African-American in the Senate, replacing Barack Obama, who was the only African-American in the Senate.
And when crap gets this heavy, politicians look for a compromise. Is there one in here? I mean, if the lieutenant governor said he's okay with Burris, and if Burris notarizes the old promise he made when he proposed himself for this, that he wouldn't run in 2010, might everybody wind up saving face here on this?
That second part, Keith, I think is the key. If Burris says, look, I recognize I didn't get this in the right way, but I'm going to serve until 2010, and then I'm not going to run. There's going to be an open seat. All these people who wanted there to be a special election can run. Then a compromise might be worked out. If he doesn't, if he says, I'm running no matter what, I'm the senator, I mean, you could be looking at this going to the Supreme Court on a constitutional fight, which is not the way Democrats want to start this term for Barack Obama, particularly in his home state of Illinois.
Yeah, and particularly when the other outcome is a 59 vote margin in the Senate. Chris Cillizza of the Washington Post. As always, Chris, great thanks. Happy New Year.
You too, Keith. Thank you.